Hello, everybody. My name is Sami Assad. I am with New Mexico Women's March. Today, we are privileged to have Joan Lamunyon Sanford, Executive Director of the New Mexico Coalition for the New Mexico Religious Coalition for Reproductive Justice. And joining me as well is Lisa Padilla, Program Director of Mujeres and Feminist Youth Organizer of Mujeres, Yahaira Carreras. They are my co-conspirators at New Mexico Women's March as well. So, Joan, how are you today?
Yes, thanks, Samia. I'm good. We're all great here at the New Mexico Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice. We're busy, but we're in control.
Thank you for that. To tell you a little more about Joan and all her amazing work, I'm going to hand it over to Yahaira.
Joan is the Executive Director. I am actually on the board of Reproductive Choice as well. And we're going to be asking her a few questions for her to give us some education on everything that's going on right now. So we're going to start with giving you a few questions, and just so we can share with folks and so that people are aware. There might be some things that people are missing or maybe aren't all the way informed. So we just want to bring this so folks, so we can share it and people can know what's going on and have a little bit of a deeper understanding of how they can help. Samia or Lisa, do you guys want to start with questions?
Yes, I will. Thank you so much for that, Yahaira. Bill number 8, Texas draconian law that has become the law of the land in Texas. And it has really enraged most women in the country. Before that, we saw the same in Oklahoma and Tennessee, and the threat is for it to become the law of the land. If you could tell us a little about this bill number 8, it's a heartbeat bill, and talk to us about some terminology that came out of that from Texas, whether it be the abortion, the 6-week abortion ban, the aiding and abetting and suing, and the right to marshalize some citizens for anybody trying to aid a woman that needs an abortion. Take over, Joan.
Yeah, thank you, Samia. So this bill was passed and signed by the governor in Texas in May. So unlike the abortion bans that were put in place when they used the pandemic as an excuse to temporarily close clinics in Texas and other states, we've had time to prepare, and we've been doing that. Not just the New Mexico RCRC, but our partner abortion funds, especially the abortion funds in Texas, and also the clinics in the states surrounding Texas who are absorbing those patients, those 85 to 90% of people who previously would have been able to get an abortion in Texas and now are forced to travel. I think, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a doctor. What I've been told is that that the first thing that's incorrect, that's used to emotionally manipulate people and message on this bill, is the word heartbeat. There's not a heart that's beating. There is cardiac activity. If you might remember from your high school science class, if you put cardiac cells in a Petri dish and they touch each other, they will pulse. That's what's happening in the embryo that is, so early at 6, 8, 9 weeks. That's really just a neural tube with some cardiac activity. So that's the first point there of manipulation around this bill.
And the martializing citizens, can you touch on that?
Yeah. So instead of fulfilling their responsibility as a state to govern, when Texas passed this law, the state of Texas is not going to enforce this. They are passing the enforcement on to private citizens who will then be able to collect a bounty in addition to their legal fees by suing anyone who is aiding and abetting someone who's getting an abortion. Now, I do want to make it clear that the person who is getting the abortion, the patient, is not subject to this, cannot be sued, but anyone around them can be sued. And the purpose there is to vilify abortion providers, to intimidate the person getting the abortion, and to make abortion care so stigmatized that the person needing the abortion is reluctant, is intimidated, and not going to reach out for help, that they are going to feel a sense of isolation and intimidation, because would they want to potentially set up their partner, their family, their neighbors, their friends, set them up to be sued under this? Probably not. So the one thing that we talk about at the Religious Coalition is, who is our neighbor? And across faith traditions, there's a mandate to love and care for our neighbor. But now in Texas, and religion was used to justify passing this terrible bill, but it goes against the basic teachings of religion, of any faith that I'm familiar with, that instead we're turning neighbors against neighbors. We're dividing communities. We're dividing families. And that, to me, is not what religion and faith are about.
And before Elisa goes to the next question, just to touch on briefly, are women or young ladies who are victims of rape or incest, will they be impacted by this law vis-a-vis pregnancy?
Right. So that doesn't matter. So that's what I'm going to start with, is it doesn't matter. If you need an abortion, you need an abortion. And so, yes, there are no exceptions for rape or incest, but that doesn't matter. There is never a wrong reason to have an abortion. There's never an acceptable abortion because you're a victim of rape or incest. If you need an abortion, it doesn't matter why you need an abortion. There are no better abortions or worse abortions. When we talk about exceptions for rape and incest, we fall into the patriarchy's message that some of us are allowed to have sex and some are not. And so we really don't talk much about that anymore. That there should be an exception for everyone. Everyone should be able to get the abortion that they need.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you, Joan. Lisa.
Thank you so much for that. That's a really wonderful distinction. Mexico just declared abortion legal, and Ireland declared abortion legal I think about a year ago. Is that right?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, if this might present sort of an opportunity for our country to take something that's sort of tenuously held by the courts and make it into something that's the law of the land. Have you heard much about that kind of a move?
Well, I think what's important about Mexico and Ireland is that, we've been it's been very easy to blame the Catholic Church and Catholics for these laws that prohibit abortion. But, I'm not Catholic. I was raised in the United Methodist Church, but we have a lot of Catholic people who are Catholic in our staff and in our team of volunteers. And we know from polling from our partners at Catholics for Choice that actually the majority of Catholics believe that abortion is a personal decision, not the bishop's decision, but a personal decision that someone makes according to their faith and values, and in Catholic teaching according to their conscience. And the conscience, what I've been told by Catholics who are very well educated in their faith, that conscience is number one, that you must obey the dictates of your conscience. And if your conscience is telling you that abortion is the best decision, that is the decision that you must make. So I don't know that the United States will look upon Mexico or Ireland as an example of the right thing to do, because actually this debate has been taken over by the religious right, by white Christian supremacy, who have co-opted, who have taken the message, the American value of religious freedom, to mean that they have the freedom to use their religion to discriminate. That to them, religious freedom has become the freedom to use religion to enforce their worldview and discriminate against anyone who does not hold the same worldview. And so I'm going to throw in a shameless plug here. October 12th and 13th, the New Mexico Religious Coalition and Interfaith Worker Justice of New Mexico will be holding our second convening on white nationalism and the religious right. We have some amazing speakers. We have Ann Nelson, who's written a book called The Shadow Network that outlines all of the structures that the political right and religious right have put together to make sure that their agenda advances. As progressives, we might take a lesson from some of that. We also have Mark Charles, who's a boarding school survivor here in New Mexico and has written an excellent book called Unsettling Truths. And he's going to talk about holding people of faith accountable and for the doctrine of discovery. And then we have Lisa Sharon Harper, who will be in the afternoon and will give us an introduction to faith-rooted organizing. And why is faith-rooted organizing the key to making sure that we break out of the structures of white supremacy and the patriarchy? And we're hoping that Lisa will then come back next year to follow up with a very intensive 1 to 2 day workshop on faith-rooted organizing. So those are some things to look forward to.
Sounds really
Super
powerful.
exciting, June. Oh, so I'm sorry.
No, that's great.
This is really exciting. I look forward will this be via Zoom? Will it be, people will have access to it via Zoom?
So it will be at the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center. And we intentionally chose October 12th and 13th, which are the 2 days after Indigenous Peoples Day.
That's right.
So, and our first day on Tuesday, we're starting late to give people time if they need to travel. And so we're beginning with a dinner that night just to get to know each other, have some, to me, there's nothing more sacred than sharing a meal. And the chef at the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center will be preparing a pre-European contact meal for us, which is just going to be amazing. And then the next day we'll be doing what's been called now a hybrid convening. So if people want to join in person, then we will be gathering at the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center, but we'll also be doing everything live streamed and on a secure platform, and we'll also be recording everything. So there's going to be lots of opportunities for participation depending on, if people are able to travel, if they feel safe gathering in a group, or if they'd rather, remain at home. We just want to make sure that everybody can participate in the way that works for them.
Wow, that sounds amazing. What a wonderful thing to address. I mean, those are the kinds of topics in our state that have gone unaddressed for so long, and they're always present and they're ubiquitous. So I think that's really important.
Well, I think it's important for us to come together and realize that the attacks on reproductive justice, environmental justice, climate justice, economic justice, everything, those are all orchestrated. Those are all, if you will, a common enemy. And we need to come together united as progressives, as religious progressives, as people of faith and conscience, to be united against the forces of patriarchy, racism, and white Christian supremacy.
Everything you talked about right now speaks to me personally on a religious and a faith-based perspective, and as a grassroots feminist, as a human rights activist. Everything you said just ties in all together. The moral and ethical lens is so important to organize around, and it must be centered in everything we do. And especially as it pertains to women's rights now, you will see, like, across socioeconomic statuses, this abortion ban will hit differently to different women, right? And
yeah.
How would, we know abortion access for women who have the resources this will not impact them, but women of color, impoverished women, usually don't have access to these resources. How will they be impacted? And can you talk about that a little?
Well, yeah, any injustice always falls harder on people who are at the margins. That's the way it's designed. But so the reality is that people who have the means to travel and the time to travel, to take off work, and we know that New Mexico is not the only state bordering Texas that will be absorbing many of these people. The issue is that Oklahoma, Louisiana, Nebraska, Kansas, Arkansas, the other states that are around Texas are hostile to abortion. And so their clinics are open. They have prepared to take additional patients, and they are doing that now and we love and support them. But in those states, there are things like waiting periods and mandatory ultrasound exams. And so that means that someone for whom an abortion might be a one-day visit to their doctor, to their provider, turns into 2 or 3 days. And those are additional expenses. That's additional time off work. And so that means that New Mexico will probably absorb more of the people who, for whom this is a greater burden. People can come here who maybe can afford 1 day off of work, and they can perhaps fly or drive here, get here early in the morning the night before, have their abortion done, and get back home that night, early the next day, and miss less time at work, have an easier time arranging for childcare. And so, it is going to be harder on people who don't have a credit card, who don't have the extra funds to travel, to pay for gas, to arrange childcare, to take time off work, in addition to finding the funding for just to pay the medical costs of an abortion. Our Texas abortion funds, of course, are raising money as much as they can to cover these costs. In particular, Fund Texas Choice is making sure that people can get a bus ticket, a plane ticket, to get to New Mexico or to get to Oklahoma, or wherever people need to go. But what makes the work we do here as an abortion fund with the New Mexico Religious Coalition is as my program manager likes to say, we've got you. So when you get here, we make sure you've got food. We've got a care package. We've got, maybe you're coming from Houston where it's humid. So there's, and it's sea level. So there's some extra water. There's some chapstick. There's some heating pads, some snacks, some frozen meals that you can heat up in the microwave and keep in the mini fridge in your hotel room. We've got our amazing volunteers who will make sure you get to your appointment on time, who will make sure that your prescription is dropped off and picked up at the pharmacy, who will make sure that you get back to the bus station, the train station, the airport. And so when somebody's come from a place where abortion has been stigmatized and they are bringing a burden of shame and stigma with them, and then our goal is to surround them with that beloved community that says, we love you, we trust you, and whatever decision you've made, we will do what needs to be done to make that happen. And it's not just the same, it's not just one volunteer that's doing all of this. Every day there may be a new person picking you up, because that's how many people support access to abortion. And while nobody should ever have to travel from their home to access any kind of medical care, if you have to, we're going to make sure that you're cared for and supported here.
And if you could just elaborate or touch on the importance of going to safe spaces to have these abortions, and not go, for women to know the distinction between safe spaces and as far as abortion, the abortion process itself.
Right. Well, yeah, that's really important. Abortion funds have been doing this work for years. New Mexico Religious Coalition has been a member of the National Network of Abortion Funds for 20 years, and the network was founded before that. And there are about 80 abortion funds across the country with countless donors and volunteers. And we know how to do this. We've been doing this for years. And our volunteers, across the network are trained and vetted. Here in New Mexico, we do a background check. We do a volunteer orientation. And while we've seen an outpouring on social media of outrage and concern and caring and people who want to help, spontaneous networks that are popping up on the internet, on social media, spontaneous networks of people who are calling themselves relatives, might mean well, but those are, how do we know that there's not someone who's opposed to abortion joining these networks and then posing as a caring volunteer, and then you're trapped with them, you're trapped in their home, you're trapped in their vehicle, and it's just, it's just a situation that's ripe for exploitation and abuse. And so we really encourage people not to try to create something that's already working, but find your local abortion fund and connect with them and find out the best way to help.
That kind of leads me to some of my next questions, Joan. How do people go about finding resources and places to donate?
Well, for the people that we describe as our callers, we don't use the word patients because we're not medical providers and they're not our patients, are almost always referred to us. They almost always find us through one of our clinics or one of our partner abortion funds. If people are wanting to volunteer, they can go to our website, and that's NM, like New Mexico, rcrc.org. If you go to rcrc.org, that's our national, and we are the only RCRC affiliate that does the practical support side of abortion funding. With the Religious Coalition, each affiliate is plugged into their local community, and so there's not a one size fits all. And so in New Mexico, this is something that we found a need for, and so that's what we do. Our Oklahoma affiliate actually does fundraising and is also another member of the National Network of Abortion Funds, but not all RCRC affiliates do abortion funding. They're plugged into the needs of whatever their local community might need. So just to make sure that you go to nmrcrc.org, and you can find a link there to sign up as a volunteer. You can find a link there to donate. Also, you can just if you're in a hurry, you can just go directly to bit.ly/SB8, like Senate Bill the number 8, donate, or you can even just text the word September 1 to 44321. And those are all ways that people can help. And, like I said, we've been busy. I'd love to get to the day where abortion funds are no longer needed. But, our staff has just been lifted up by all of the support from the people who are volunteering, from people who are donating. I picked up the P.O. box was full of checks this morning, and so many of them also had a note to say, we're with you, thank you, and that's what keeps us going. So we just want to say thank you, to everybody who's just been there for us. It really makes it possible to keep doing the work.
It's very encouraging to hear.
It's really important. Yes, thank you. I have to ask you a question. What gives you drive every day to do what you do? I mean, it takes a lot of faith and commitment to keep doing this work day in, day out. I do not doubt the amount of pressure you face from different parts of community.
Well, my mother was the first nurse when Planned Parenthood opened in Albuquerque at the all volunteers, one night a week at the public health center that is over by the university, and I guess last year that was that old building was finally demolished. So, I did have a very strong role model growing up, and I actually didn't find out she was a nurse, a volunteer nurse there for Planned Parenthood until a few years ago at a Planned Parenthood fundraising banquet, and someone said, "Oh, that's your mom?" Well, she was, she was one of our nurses. So, and I asked her about it, and she said, "Oh, for goodness sakes, we were just handing out contraception." Well, that was 1968 or 65. She was handing out contraception while she was pregnant with my little brother. So yeah, it was a big deal. But now what keeps me going is the fact that in 5 or 6 years, I'm ready to retire. And I know that I can, because there are so many, there's such a strong new generation of activists like Yahira who are already taking on this work, moving it in ways that I can't even imagine. And I know that whatever happens, and for the first time since I've been doing this work, I think we may lose Roe, but I also know we're going to be okay, because a generation of activists coming up are so smart and so creative. They're smart about things I didn't even know you could be smart about, and so I'm not worried. And so right now, that's what keeps me going, is to make sure that I'm creating a place where I'm going to step out, and my partner and I will get the RV, and we're going to retire and go visit Niagara Falls, because I'm a desert rat and I can't even imagine that much water. And I'll be watching and cheering, and it's going to be beautiful. So that's what keeps me going.
Part of our youth initiative, we're trying to create youth that are resourced for their communities, not only for their own peers, but for their families, and to have these conversations, right? And all kinds of feminist topics. But how would you suggest we educate young folks of color in these topics in a system that lacks space and structure to even start the conversation?
Yeah. And those are hard conversations to have. I think that it's important to know that actually, you know, most people know someone who's had an abortion, or they are that person who's had an abortion. And, you know, if you think you don't know someone who's had an abortion, you need to ask yourself why and who's afraid to talk to you about that. So I think that's a good place to start. And I think, you know, it's important to remember that these are our personal decisions, that we can support the decisions that another person might make. It may or may not be the decision we would make for ourselves, but we can trust that they have the wisdom and the resources to make that decision, and they have the wisdom to know who to turn to ask for help, to ask for, you know, who do they trust to help them, you know, work through the decision. I think keeping it on a personal level, but, you know, also these are essential conversations. And you know, one reason they're so important is, you know, it's not unusual for when we have a minor who's come to us for help, and they're almost always with, if not their parent, you know, a trusted adult, another family member. But it's not unusual for their mothers to say, she didn't know she could turn to me because I didn't tell her that I had an abortion. And we can't be keeping secrets. That just continues the stigma and the shame. So I guess that's where I would start with. Make it personal, rather than a politically charged conversation. And sometimes, though, you know, there are people who are never going to change my mind about what I know about abortion and how and why I support access to abortion. So, you know, if you're in a debate with someone who's opposed to abortion and who's dug in and who will not change their mind and who's probably internalized the misinformation, you might think about, you're not going to change their mind, but is there somebody who's listening, who's overhearing that conversation, whose mind might be open? And so you might be having a conversation with one person, but you're really talking to somebody else who's listening. So those might be important things to remember.
That's a really wonderful point, Joan. You never know who might be listening, who needs to hear those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just something we can't, you know, what is that? You're only as unhealthy as your secrets. Abortion is not a shameful secret.
Wow, that was very powerful. Thank you so much, Joan, for all the work you're doing and continue to do. We hope that we can all be there on the 12th and the 13th. I plan to. You've talked me into it. I've taken a training with Joan, and it is fascinating. As a Muslim woman of faith, I know the value of the language you spoke and how important it is for all women of faith, progressive women. It doesn't matter where you come from. We all have to stand up for a woman's right to choose, respect who we are, and recognize the sacredness of our bodies and the right for us to have autonomy over our own bodies. So with this section of this Senate Bill 8 that has brought so much anger to all of us, I know we were all talking prior, and we're devastated. It's devastating, and it's really depressing, but we're very mad. So Women's March will be hosting on October 2nd alongside 60 other reproductive rights and human rights organizations will march on the street and rally on October 2nd. So look for the Albuquerque event. We'll be announcing the location and time. Thank you so much, Joan. From one sister to the another, I love you for the sake of humanity. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Yahaira and Lisa. If anybody else wants to add anything, or if you'd like to say one more word, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, well, thank you for listening, and thank you for being here and educating all of us. And I'm really happy to be part of the board and getting to know more about everything that Religious Coalition for Choice has been doing in the past and is continuing to doing amazing work. And I'm so happy to be part of it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Joan. Yeah, appreciate all the work that you've been doing and will continue to do, and hope to partner with you in an ongoing way.
And we're very proud to have you in New Mexico.
Well, you know, the only way we can do things is together. And so I always love you know, talking to and meeting, you know, other groups, other activists, other friends, you know, and I would just tell people, you know, nmrcrc.org, you know, bit.ly, SB8 donate, and or text September 1 to 44321. And we'll be looking for you on October 2nd and October 12th and 13th.
And we'll post the links in a link tree on our website as well as our Facebook and our Instagram, so that people have multiple ways to get the information that they need.
Yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. And there are opportunities for organizations to sponsor and support the white nationalism and the religious right convening.
Wonderful.
If you could say more about that?
Well, you know, we're actually still just putting all of that together. But, you know, what we tried last year, and I think I really liked, is that rather than having several levels of sponsorship with each one with an increasing cost and increasing perks, you know, we will have one sponsorship level that, you know, will provide, you know, a couple of tickets to the convening for, you know, members of your organization, you know, mention in the program book, you know, the usual things that come with sponsorships for events. But we're going to ask people to, the fee for the sponsorship, we're going to ask people to base that on the budget of their organization. And so that those who have more should pay more. But that doesn't mean you get more. Everyone, you know, will pay for the same sponsorship according to their ability to pay, according to their organizational budget. And, you know, of course, that will be on an honor system. We're not going to ask for everyone to turn in their financial statements. But that just seems to be the most just way to set this kind of thing up. And we imagine doing something similar for the registration fees for the event as well.
That's equity in action. All right. Well, thank you so much, Joan. We look forward to future conversations and any updates that happen with our neighbors, I suppose, and anything up to date in New Mexico. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise. Thanks.
Bye-bye. All right. Bye-bye.